Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this, another installment of what is fast becoming the most popular segment here on the channel, Ring IQ Hate Mail! In my previous video, I talked about boxing's revolving door policy that has led to the likes of Jarrell Miller being afforded opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and to that, a guy who goes by the name Thrash Attack, 2185 said, 2 guys just died, and you're still encouraging peds in boxing, and you think the problem is that they aren't hiding it better? That's exactly what I think the problem is, because I don't think boxing has a problem with peds. They have a problem hiding it. Thrash Attack continued, and we shouldn't take it seriously or care that known drug cheats are still getting opportunities. To that, Zerg, a friend of the channel, said that had nothing to do with peds. Those Japanese fighters as opponents didn't get popped for anything. At least, I didn't see anything regarding that. So, peds really isn't the issue until it's proven those fighters were on the sauce. Until then, you're literally creating a false scenario for your virtue signaling, and that's gross, my guy. There were 2 boxers in Japan this weekend that unfortunately passed away. There's been no report indicating that those fighters succumbed to their injuries due to their opponents using banned substances, and more to the point, guys like Thrash Attack that like to stand on their soapbox and wag their finger in everybody's face when it comes to peds lack the courage of their convictions. Because if you're so outraged about boxers being afforded opportunities after they test positive for banned substances, how many boxing matches have you boycotted? How many are you going to? Because the list of boxers that have popped hot for something gets bigger every year. And how many names on that list have you boycotted due to your moral authority, all your virtue? Have you boycotted Tyson Fury's fights? Have you boycotted Conor Ben's, Canelo's, Ryan Garcia? Or did you just sit back and watch those fights like everybody else, not pretending to be the patron saint for boxers? Because I'm not doing that, and I'm not going to. The sport of boxing doesn't seem to have a problem with boxers that use banned substances, because if they did, they wouldn't make it so easy for them to come back. So when they come back, what do you want me to do? Cry about it? If the sport of boxing and the boxers themselves don't care, and they don't shun these fighters, they don't ostracize them, they don't come up with harsher penalties for fighters who test positive for banned substances, and they don't seem to make it harder for them to come back. Boxing, all by itself, without me and without this channel, has a revolving door policy when it comes to this. You want me to lose more sleep over it than they do? When they're the ones taking the punches, and they're the ones signing on to fight these offenders, some repeat offenders that have tested positive for banned substances more than once, and the boxers don't seem to care. How many times in the last 5 years has somebody in the media brought up Tyson Fury's Nandrolone case while he was en route to 2 Usyk fights? While he's being glorified for his boxing acumen by all the major media outlets en route to not 1, but 2 Usyk fights, how many times did you see somebody in the media bring it up? None. That this guy tested positive for a banned substance, then absconded for 2 years. Conveniently retired to get out of his comeuppance. Did all of your moral authority lead you to boycott his fights since he came back? Because if it didn't, you don't care as much as you let on. You're not as altruistic as you think you are. You're just as much a party to it as everybody else if you're still watching these guys. You're just being phony about it, pretending to care, when if push comes to shove, you're not gonna do anything different from anybody else. You're gonna sit back, you're gonna enjoy the show, you're gonna watch the fights, and the fighters are gonna have the fights. What you should be asking yourself is, why do the fighters even entertain these guys? Why does the industry? The industry doesn't care, and that's what I pointed out. If boxing as a sport really wanted to clean up its act, they wouldn't make it so easy for these guys to come back. But they do, because of an inconvenient truth people like you don't want to address. You would like to believe that most of the sport is clean. Or maybe that the fighters that you support, the fighters that you like to watch, oh, they would never. They wouldn't do that.
Childish.
As you sit back and watch the fighters that do, and the fighters that you think don't, all the same. You watch the ones that have been caught and the ones that haven't. All the same. So what's the goddamn difference? You don't really care about doping in the sport of boxing. You're not really mad about that. You're mad at me for being ahead of the curve. You're mad at me for being indifferent. But the boxers themselves are indifferent. The industry is indifferent. Conor Benn tests positive for a banned substance 2.5, 3 years ago, however long it's been, and Chris Eubank Jr., per reports, was still going to fight him. The only reason he didn't is because the event got canceled. Just to end up fighting him anyway 3 years later. You should be asking yourself why. Why would you give him the opportunity? The answer is simple. It's because Chris doesn't give a damn, and neither do most people in this industry. So who are you trying to kid? What point are you trying to make? That I should be more outraged? That I should be more upset? The actual guys taking the actual punches don't seem all that bothered by it. So why should I? One of the guys fighting this weekend, in the main event, Dillian Whyte, has tested positive for banned substances more than once. Come back every single time. On the premise of your moral authority, are you gonna skip his fight? Or are you gonna sit back and watch it like the rest of us? Because if you're not going to actually do anything with all of this energy you have for my video, my perspective, all of this convenient outrage, if it doesn't lead to some kind of action, what the hell is it good for? You want to wag your finger in my face to make yourself feel better? Better about what? That you're watching the same fighters I am? The difference between me and you is at least I'm honest. I don't pretend to be altruistic. I'm not concerned about it because the people actually taking the punches aren't concerned about it. The men, the women, as anti-doping protocols have become more uniform in the sport, more and more fighters are testing positive. Now, why do you think that is? Grow up. You're romanticizing this thing and you're angry at me that I'm not. I'm not looking at boxing through a filter. I take it for what it is, and near as I can tell, based on what I've been seeing the last few years, it would seem that a sizable portion of the top-level athletes are on something, and they know it. That's why they're so blasé about it. So why wouldn't I be blasé about it? Don't get mad at me for being ahead of the curve. But Thrash Attack didn't stop there. He actually made it worse. I didn't say they were on PEDs, the opponents of the two guys that just died, or claim that they were until they get tested. You people are just retarded Americans who think it's okay to use PEDs in every sport like they do in the WWE, NFL, baseball, etc. The bare minimum you can do is keep that idiotic opinion. Do you think this guy boycotted Eubank versus Benn? To yourself. This is boxing's equivalent of a Karen, because I'm fairly confident that from the moment Tyson Fury unretired in circa 2017-2018, after his Nandrolone case, I'm pretty sure that Thrash Attack watched all of his fights. And Dillian Whyte's. He's only having a hissy fit about Jarrell Miller because he's not British. That's what he's in his tits about. What I said about Jarrell Miller's doping cases and how boxing doesn't really care about doping. If it did, they wouldn't have given Tyson Fury a title shot, a WBC title shot, having not fought in any eliminators upon his return. They still let him fight for the title. More recently, as Ryan Garcia was coming off a doping suspension, the WBA still let him fight for a version of their title, so that you can get mad at me when I say boxing doesn't care. And you don't either, you just pretend to. I'm fairly confident, you being a Brit, you didn't miss the Benn versus Eubank fight in spite of Conor Benn's doping case. You didn't skip it, you didn't boycott it, you watched it alongside everybody else. So how much do you care, really? You just pretend to so you can seem more moral and more virtuous than your peers, while engaging in the same activities as them for the same reason, because you don't really give a damn. If you did, you wouldn't be watching this shit. It's ableism at its best. The same way that the fighters enable these kinds of practices by still fighting these guys that have popped hot before, you enable them by watching them. The promoters enable them by still using these fighters on their shows, in their main events, like this weekend's. The broadcast networks enable them by broadcasting those shows, in spite of their sketchy history and doping cases. Don't try to make it a regional thing like it's just the Americans that are testing positive for banned substances. Amir Khan tested positive for one right after the Brook fight. Coincidentally, it was the same substance that Ryan tested positive for, Osterin. So what, you believe Amir Khan's story but not Ryan's? Or is it all just bullshit and you can't accept that? Because you're childish. Because you want to look at boxing through rose-tinted lenses. You want to look at it through a filter, and you're mad that I don't, that I won't. I'm going to call a spade a spade. I think most, if not all of them, are doping. I'm okay with that. Mostly because they're okay with that. If they weren't, they wouldn't keep giving these guys opportunities. These guys, these girls, they wouldn't fight them, they'd shun them. They would ostracize them if it meant that much to them. The reason they don't is because there are more guilty parties here than you care to acknowledge. Because you're childish. And I would suggest that if the perspectives expressed on doping in the sport of boxing are that egregious to you, the ones expressed on this channel, don't come here. Don't watch. Nobody's twisting your arm. Nobody's got a gun to your head telling you to watch these videos. You do it because you don't actually care. Not enough to do anything about it. Got a load of Sally Struthers over here. Clutching at her pearls because I said the boxers don't care about doping, so why should I? Now, ahead of this weekend's fight, involving a two-time offender in Dillian Whyte, Ben Davison, who trains Moses Itauma, says he sees no reason that Itauma can't beat Usyk. That's just hubris. Do you think Thrash Attack is going to skip this weekend's fight because it involves a two-time ped cheat? No, I don't. On Saturday night in Riyadh, Itauma puts his reputation, undefeated record, and WBO #1 contender status on the line against seasoned contender Dillian Whyte. Such has been Itauma's meteoric rise that many expect the 20-year-old to become a world champion sooner rather than later. Whyte, 37, has already shared the ring with some of this era's biggest names, including Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, but presents a valuable litmus test for Itauma, who has just 25 professional rounds to his name compared to Whyte's 192. For all the hype surrounding Itauma, 12-0 with 10 KOs, the heavyweight division is currently ruled by undisputed champion Alexander Usyk. Unbeaten in 12 professional career starts, the Ukrainian has won all 4 belts on 3 separate occasions, once at cruiser and twice at heavy. His most recent triumph came in July at Wembley Stadium, when he stopped Daniel Dubois in 5 rounds. Speaking to Boxing News in Riyadh, Davison was asked whether or not Itauma would consider a fight with Usyk should he come through Whyte, 31-3 with 22 KOs. It's not something that we'd straight away say no to. Put it that way, he replied. Itauma's blend of speed, power, and footwork has already won over many boxing experts, despite just having 12 fights. Davison is convinced his fighter has the tools to match and beat an experienced champion like Usyk. He's got the capabilities to, Davison said. He's not the type of person who has to catch anybody at the right time. He's got the capability to beat anybody in the world. I'd call that hubris, is what I'd call that. At just 12-0, even if he does beat Dillian Whyte. And most people are expecting him to. Dillian Whyte is not a carbon copy of Alexander Usyk. When Usyk eats, Dillian doesn't shit. They're very different fighters that compete at very different levels, even if Dillian is a seasoned contender who's been in there with some of the best. That doesn't make him Usyk, and that doesn't mean you'd be ready for Usyk because you beat Dillian. I don't even know that Ben means what he says when he says what he says about Moses and Usyk, because everybody knows that Usyk is on the verge of retiring after all. They know that he's only got 1 or 2 more fights left in him, the max. So Moses Itauma versus Usyk may never see the light of day, making it easy to say things like this. These convenient assertions about a fight that you don't expect to happen. It's easy to say that Moses has what it takes to beat him when you know they'll never fight. One of Itauma's most valuable traits is his maturity beyond his years. That laid-back heavyweight appears unfazed by expectation, staying composed under pressure, a quality Davison believes is key to his rapid progress. He's very cool, very calm, very mature. That's part of the reason why he's able to do what he's done at his age. Most people at 20 years old might get carried away with the expectation and all the stuff that people are saying, but it's water off a duck's back to him. He focuses on the right things, and if he knows what's good for him, as Ben describes, he'll know he's not ready for Usyk. Nowhere near ready for that guy. You would derail this kid's entire career putting him in there with Usyk, and why would you want to do that when he's only 20? Dillian Whyte will be the very best fighter Moses has encountered so far. Dillian Whyte is a seasoned guy after all. He's been in there with Fury, with Anthony Joshua, with Derek Chisora, with Joseph Parker, Oscar Rivas, Alexander Povetkin. He's been around. And I've noticed Dillian's condition ahead of this fight. He does look match fit and trim, more so than I've ever seen him. He's taking this assignment seriously. At 37 years old, he knows that he can't recover from this loss as easily as he recovered from the loss to Anthony Joshua, or the knockout loss to Alexander Povetkin, the knockout loss to Tyson Fury. Time is of the essence. This is a make-or-break fight for Dillian Whyte, who I think is on a 2 or 3 fight-winning streak, most of which flew low under the radar, but he can't afford to lose this one, not at this age. I think he's going to. I do think Moses is going to stop him. And afterwards, I've some recommendations, some realistic ones, that would not only lend themselves to Moses' continued development, but his marquee value as well, because the bring-along process isn't just about sharpening a fighter's skills, it's also about allowing that fighter to develop a fan base with performance after performance. Rome wasn't built in a day. To develop a fighter, not just develop a fighter, but a marquee attraction, that does take time. There isn't actually a need to rush Moses into a world title situation at only 20 years old. You'd be throwing caution to the wind needlessly, and I think the people at Queensbury are smarter than that. So if Moses takes care of business this weekend, I could go for a Joe Joyce fight right after that. Joe Joyce didn't retire. Still hanging around. He was one of the somebodies at this weight. And remember that Moses is only 12-0 now. 13-0 if he wins this weekend. There is a lot more work needs doing. You're talking about a fighter with under 20 fights. What's the hurry? Give me a Joe Joyce fight. Or maybe he can face the winner of the upcoming Dave Allen versus Arslanbek Makhmudov fight. I could go for that as well. What you want to do with Moses right now is put him in there with seasoned vets that are perhaps getting long in the tooth, because he needs those rounds. He needs that development. So that is a Joe Joyce. That is a Dave Allen. Maybe Daniel Dubois down the line. You build him up, not just because he needs more rounds for more experience, but also because he needs more time to develop into a draw, a marquee attraction. My official prediction is that Moses is going to knock out Dillian this weekend, and there's a lot more work needs doing after that, if he does.